The Ojai Valley has long been known as a region of natural beauty and spirituality. Nestled amidst its majestic hills, the Krotona Institute of Theosophy is a destination for many who seek solace from the noise and chaos of the outside world.
Cretona is a refuge for wildlife, too. Wide open spaces allow them to roam and live in peace. The wonders of the natural world quiet the mind and nurture the spirit. One of the gifts of a tranquil place like Cretona is that it facilitates the inner quest. For a brief span of time, one can leave behind the worldly cares to dip in the refreshing waters of silence. Deep within each one is a longing to touch that which is eternal in oneself. It can only happen when one is still.
Many people today are drawn towards quiet places to help gain a certain refreshment or perhaps respite from the pressures and the noise of everyday living, perhaps also to gain a certain perspective on their lives. For the last century, many people have chosen to visit Cretona, as it is called, the Krotona Institute of Theosophy, which has its own very special spiritual atmosphere.
Krotona is like my personal retreat place. It's my personal spiritual environment. And it's where I can study, I can meditate, I can share Theosophy with friends in Krotona and enjoy a very spiritual and tranquil place.
There is a magical energy here, which is felt when one is grounded. And even if you're not grounded, there is something which makes one settle and ground oneself.
It provides a calm and quiet atmosphere, something similar to an ashram or a sanctuary. And this, I believe, facilitates deeper study that involves meditation, reflection, and other things, so that one can go deeper into oneself and try to understand some of the difficult questions that arise.
Cretona is special because of the people here and nature. So it's just a beautiful place to be.
The Krotona Institute of Theosophy takes its name from Crotone, a port city in southern Italy where the philosopher Pythagoras had his school of science, art, and philosophy. Cretona was established to promote the teaching and living of theosophical principles and to train future theosophical lecturers and teachers to spread the universal principles of the ageless wisdom.
It is an international center and community of residents inspired by a vision of the oneness of all life and dedicated to the spiritual awakening of the human family. Cretona residents strive to live in accordance with these ideals.
Communities like this are really rare anywhere in the world, where you have a group of people, especially with the theosophical point of view, who are living together and also have a work to do together.
Our community is based very much on theosophical principles. And first and foremost among these is the principle of the unity of life, that there is one life which runs through everything, that we are all therefore interconnected and interrelated.
Cretona is a contemplative community. So whether you are interested in occult Christianity or East Indian philosophies, whether you're a Taoist or a Buddhist, you can find solace, you can find peacefulness.
Centers are also places that can serve as a channel for spiritual energies to spread those energies in the world. And I think that Krotona as a Theosophical center fulfills this important role because those who live here with the specific intention of trying to lead a spiritual life and to become a channel for the spiritual forces.
In the early 1900s, Dr. Annie Besant, international president of the Theosophical Society, approved plans for the establishment of a Theosophical center in the southwestern United States. The plan for such a center was proposed by Albert P. Warrington, and with the help of a group of early Theosophists, a suitable location was found. Thus did the Cretona Institute of Theosophy begin in 1912 in Los Angeles, California, in the foothills under the Hollywood sign. When Hollywood saw rapid growth in the 1920s, it no longer provided the serene, idyllic setting for Cretona. Warrington and fellow Theosophists then purchased a new site on a lovely ridge in beautiful Ojai Valley and moved Cretona to its present location.
The vision of Warrington was to have a center of peace where people could come for renewal, to find a quiet place for study and meditation. When Cretona was established in Hollywood, there was not a national center yet. There was no headquarters for the TS in America. And the president at that time, Dr. Van Hook, had resigned in 1912, and Warrington was elected to be national president. Since there was no headquarters, the center for TS in America always moved to wherever the president was. And so Cretona also became the center not only of the esoteric school, but also the TS in America, because Warrington was the head of both. In 1920, another president came to be elected. That was L.W. Rogers. And in 1924, when conversation was happening around moving Cretona to a quieter area, Mr. Rogers preferred to bring the headquarters back to Chicago, where it was before the move to Cretona. Then there was a little bit of a controversy as to how to divide the funds or the proceeds of the sale of the Hollywood property. Annie Besant at that time stepped in and said that half of the proceeds should go to TS in America to establish a new center in Chicago. The other half would remain with Cretona, and she had written specifically, as described in The Messenger, which was a Theosophical publication at that time, in October 1922, she wrote that Cretona was to be the ES Center. Freedom of thought is the established practice in the Theosophical Society. Everyone is free to believe what they want to believe. We respect all faiths, all religions, and there cannot be an imposing of any teachings on anybody. At the same time, it was from the days of HPB, actually. She was concerned that there was not much of a seriousness in many members to really apply the teachings of Theosophy. That's why she established the esoteric school. And in the esoteric school, there's really nothing special about it. It's just a group of people who seriously want to attempt, at least to attempt, to live the teachings. That you cannot impose on any member. It has to be something that comes from them. And Annie Besant's vision was to have a center where people can come to live in community with that goal of maybe even fostering that way of life for those who want it.
7 structures were initially built in 1924 on what became known as Cretona Hill. The library, the administration building, 4 new residences for its early workers, and the water tower and garage. Perched on the highest point of Cretona Hill, the tower at that time could be seen for miles across the valley. 3 years later, Cretona Hall was added, along with more residences for the workers, most of them volunteers. The principal buildings were designed by Robert Stacy Judd, who integrated Spanish mission style and Mayan influences in his architecture. Near the entrance gate, the old Kerfoot Ranch House, which was the only structure on the property when it was purchased, served as an office and home of Superintendent Mr. Eugene Munson during the building of Cretona.
Dr. Annie Besant, International President of the Theosophical Society and first President of Cretona, visited Ojai for the first time in October 1926. She described the valley as, quote, one of the beauty spots of the world, unquote. She came with her protege and adopted son, Jiddu Krishnamurti, who similarly loved the valley and chose it to be his home.
Although the first buildings were established in 1924, Annie Besant didn't really get to Ojai till 1926. And she had Krishnamurti with her then. It was the first introduction of the community in Ojai to Theosophy and what the Theosophists here were doing. You see, the city of Ojai was only 3 years old when Krotona came here. It was established in 1921. And so Krotona, established here in 1924, became an intrinsic part of the growth of Ojai as a center for spirituality.
In her first address to the citizens of Ojai, Besant summed up the Theosophical philosophy simply as brotherhood and friendliness. She stressed that even a partial recognition of the truth of our unity would bring a tremendous change in the world. Wars would cease, mutual sympathy and help would replace criticism and condemnation. Selfishness would become the only sin. Moved by the unique atmosphere in the valley, she envisaged Ojai as a place where such ideals could take root.
Annie Besant had purchased quite a bit of property after she came. A few months after she came, she purchased what was an adjacent property to Krotona that became the place where Krishnamurti held his Star Camp talks.
In bringing Theosophy and Krishnamurti to the valley, her influence continues to be seen in Ojai's focus on spirituality, music, art, health, and wellness.
Today, Cretona continues to attract many visitors who come to enjoy the surroundings, to engage in spiritual studies, or even just to view a piece of Ojai history. Cretona's School of Theosophy plays a central part in Cretona's international outreach. Faculty and students come from various parts of the country and the world. The school's programming is designed to explore the ageless wisdom teachings, promote self-understanding, kinship, and spiritual unfoldment.
When Annie Besant's early announcement in the 1920s when we moved here, that there would be a school of, she called it a college of Theosophy. Her vision was that it would be primarily for the esoteric school. But it didn't develop that way in the long run. In the 60s, early 60s, Enshri Ram, then the international president of the Theosophical Society, arranged for Lawrence and his wife Phoebe Bendit to come from England to begin the new school. And little by little then it began to be developed, including eventually its home in the house that the Bendits originally built for themselves. That home went through several changes, transformations, 1967 and into the 70s. All of that became transformed into what we know today as the school. And then the real changes began to take place when Joy took over in the 80s. She also arranged for the student faculty units to be built so that in past people had to stay in town and find other places to stay if they came to Cretona. Now there was a real place for students. And from the beginning of the school's planning, the Kern Foundation offered to help. The Kern Foundation wanted the school to be modeled on the School of the Wisdom in Adyar. And so, although the training of Theosophical members for leadership especially was always an important element of the school's curriculum, then it began to branch out into something more like the School of the Wisdom.
I have spoken in the Theosophical Society in many countries, in the Netherlands, in New Zealand, in Australia, certainly in USA several times, but at a length time from the perspective of giving a course for 2 to 4 or 5 weeks. It has been either in Adyar in India, in the School of the Wisdom, or in Krotona. And the advantage of that really from my point of view, that if I have to teach something, my conscience will bother me if I'm not ahead of the students, at least by 2 steps. So a subject I want to learn about, I agree to teach it.
As I share, I come up with ideas that I didn't know about during my preparation for the lectures and for the seminars. Questions that people ask me, they trigger in me and they flood my mind with new ideas and avenues to explore. Therefore, it's a growth experience and a sharing experience.
Once I started coming and hearing the lectures and meeting the people that Cretona attracts, I thought to myself, wow, I've wanted something like this for a long time. I sort of dreamed and used to tell friends, you know, Ojai would be such a great place for university or college or an institution of higher learning. I didn't quite get that we actually have a place of much higher learning. And this is it. This is it. And it's fulfilled a lot of my inner search, my desire for more spiritual understanding and food for thought, also coming closer to my own mortality. You know, why are we here? As Ravi Ravindra always points out, the purpose of our lives, you know, that we didn't create ourselves.
The topics I'm raising really are not of just whether something is interesting here or there. I try to raise topics which are really relevant to our own spiritual search. For example, very fundamental requirement in any spiritual search is to ask the question, who am I? Why has these great forces, whether we call them God or not, doesn't matter, why have they created me? Only for a few decades. One has to remember this.
When I was asked to take on the directorship of the school, I was following in the steps of Joy Mills and Shirley Nicholson and Nelda Samaral, all of whom were amazing directors, and all of them having a strong background in education. They were educators.
And then getting to the most important part of Cretona School, what Cretona School in essence is is the programming. The Partners in Theosophy program was designed for senior members of the TSA to help them progress in any direction that they selected, which could be of assistance to the society, whether it's teaching, and some of them developed curriculums for classes. And we had leadership classes, and I taught them different techniques on how to lead, how to conduct meetings, how to answer simple questions. The students who came to the school interacted a lot with each other, and when they left Cretona, they had a network of other theosophists, not only in their local group, but throughout the country. So I believe these programs at Cretona School helped to create the nucleus of universal brotherhood, right here in our own society.
The school, in my view anyway, has always been the hub of our outreach and also of our community's ways of being together, because we host not only the school and classes and so forth, but also community gatherings of various kinds, including the Ojai Valley Lodge that meets there each week. So I think we have always been somehow that entity within the community and the corporation that helps to hold the community together.
Students wanting to study from the comfort of their own homes may do so through the online School of Theosophy, a joint venture between the Theosophical Society in America and the Cretona Institute. The online school offers courses on theosophy, spirituality and living the spiritual life, karma, life after death, and reincarnation. There are also Partners in Theosophy courses for those interested in leadership training.
The historic Cretona Library is perhaps the most visited structure in Cretona. Students and scholars from around the world have benefited from its extensive collection of books, journals, and archives on theosophy, various religions, metaphysics, philosophy, and spirituality.
Of course, from the beginning, a major focal point of the Institute has been the Krotona Library. It was one of the first structures built on the property. Members of the Theosophical Society and the early residents of Cretona donated their own books. Most of the donors had written their names on the inside covers. And it was interesting to see, when you read the names, who was around at the time, who the members were, who the donors were. The books were primarily, of course, on theosophy. There were books, early books published by the publishing houses in India, in England, and in the US. Many of the books had Betty Warrington's signature in them. Betty Warrington was the wife of A.P. Warrington. Visitors to the library when I was librarian knew Betty quite well and thought of her as a kind of mentor for the young people. She was a spiritual advisor, a counselor, and I was really surprised by the number of people who said that Betty was the first person who introduced them to esoteric ideas and to theosophy. From the beginning, Annie Besant also wanted the library to be a place of peace and harmony. So a formal garden was built on the patio just outside the library entrance. With its beautiful cascading pool, it was a focal point. When the windows are open in the library foyer, you can hear the beautiful sound of the cascading water in the pool and in the fountain on the patio. So everywhere, both outside the library and within, is harmonious and peaceful.
Across the library foyer is an inviting music room with mystical paintings depicting humanity's coming into being. The veranda looking to the hills on the east is a favorite spot for many who come to commune with nature, watch the sun or moon rise over the mountains, meditate, paint, or do yoga.
Adjoining the library is Cretona Hall. It was completed in 1927, 3 years after the library. Large gatherings, lectures, concerts, ceremonials, group retreats, and daily meditations are conducted in this unique building with its large windows and high wood-beamed ceiling.
The Krotona Quest Bookshop is a specialty metaphysical bookstore with a large inventory of books on theosophy, psychology, religions, esoteric teachings, philosophy and science, healing, life after death, and vegetarian cooking. Gift items and souvenirs are also available.
For those wishing to stay at Cretona, student-faculty units are available. Designed by Paul Sterling Hogue, they are marked by arches in front derived from the Golden Mean. Each unit has a bedroom, private bath, fully equipped kitchen, a small living room, and outdoor patio. The current guest house, built in 1958, provides additional accommodations for personal retreats. 4 studio-type apartments each have a kitchen, private bath, and back door patio looking to the hills.
Adding to the enjoyment of anyone visiting are the gardens that are lovingly maintained by residents. Native plants sustain wildlife. Tranquil spaces aid in study and contemplation.
Of course, there is a great value in life outside any Theosophical center too. But I feel that living in a Theosophical center like Krotona, I can really be embedded in the Theosophical ideals and service. So the opportunity that the place gives us to lead a spiritual life is something that I'm very grateful for.
In one word, how would you describe Cretona?
Wonderful.
Serene. Then serenity, that's the word that comes to mind. It's not just the peacefulness of the place, it's the peacefulness that gets stimulated inside.
Home.
Transformative.
Ignition. It ignited, that's my word, ignited me into stepping into a spiritual path.
Service. And reverence.
Wholeness, theosophically speaking. Those are 3 words.
Transformative.
Luminous.
Serenity comes to me, although I haven't spoken about it. And I think it comes from, the people who thought about Cretona in the 1920s, and we're carrying on the baton for them.
For a century now, Cretona has been a quiet sanctuary in the Ojai Valley, providing a setting where, as Rumi put it, one could journey within oneself, enter a mine of rubies, and bathe in the splendor of one's own light.